In this example, we are going to develop a Java application that has a user-defined class. First, we are going to define the class. Then we are going to create objects from this class. So let us do the first part, which is creating the class, and then in the second part we are going to show you how to create objects from this class. Let us read it together. It says we need to define a class with the following specification. It says it is called Marathon Runner, so this is the name of the class, and it has 3 private data members. So it's already mentioned that the data members should be private. The first one is a string and called name. The second and third are both double. The first is called distance and the second is called time. So let us implement the class part by part. So let us go to JGrass to implement this part first. Now we are in JGrass, so we need to implement the first part, writing the class definition. First we write public. We write public class and we put the class name, which is Marathon Runner. Then we open and close the class definition by curly brackets. Next, we need to define the private data members. We write a private, the data type, which is a string, and the first data type is name. And then for the second and third data types will be private, double. The first one is distance, and the second one is time. So we are done with the first part of the class specifications. Let's go back and see for the second part. You should know that this class is for Marathon Runner. So you should know what is the meaning of distance and what is the meaning of time. So the distance of the marathon and the time the runner takes for the marathon. In part B, it is requested to write a constructor that has input parameters name, distance, and time. So when it says accepts, it means the input parameter for this constructor is name, distance, and time as input parameters to initialize the private data members. And you know the purpose of the constructor is to initialize. There is no condition on any of the parameters, so simply this constructor will copy the parameters into the private data members. So writing the constructor, we say public, and the name of the constructor should be the same as the name of the class, so it will be Marathon Runner. And as it is mentioned that it should accept 3 parameters. The first is name as a string, the second is distant as double, and the third is time as double. Simply it copies the input parameters into the private data members, and notice that the names of the input parameters are the same names as the private data members. So therefore we are going to use this keyword for referring the private data members. So we will say this dot name is equal to name. This dot distance is equal to distance, and this dot time is equal to time. So whenever we write the variable preceded by this, that means we are referring to the private data members. And if we write the variable alone, that means we are referring to the parameter. So let's go to the third part. But before that, I need to write a comment that this is for A, part A, and this is for part B. And for part C, I'm going to write a comment here. This is for part C. So we need to go back to the problem statement and see what is required in part C. In part C, it says we need to provide only one accessor, which is a get method, and one mutator, which is the set method for only the distance data member. So here we need to write the getter and setter for the distance data member. So first we are going to write the get. So for the get, it will be public, followed by the return value for the distance, which is double. And then the name will be get distance. Get distance, and D is in capital letter. And you know, for the getter, we don't have any input parameter. And inside the getter, we write return, and we return the distance. And we don't need to write this here, the keyword this, because we don't have any naming conflict inside the method. And now for the set method, you know that it should be public, and the return value is void, and the name is set distance. And it should have an input parameter for the new value of distance, and since distance is double, so the input parameter will be defined as double, and we are going to call it distance. And inside there is no return because this is a void method. Simply we will change the distance data member with the distance that is coming from the input parameter. So we write this dot distance is equal to distance. And this will complete part C. I'm going to write a comment for part D. In part D, we need to define a private method. Notice it says here a private. So a private method that is called calculate speed, which calculates and returns the speed as a double. So that means this is going to return a double value of the marathon runner. The speed is calculated using the formula. So we divide the distance over time. The result, which is the speed, will be the return value. So now to define the private method, it will be private, followed by the return value, which is double, and the name is calculate speed, and we will see if it needs any input parameters or not, and it should return the distance divided by time. Again, there is no need to precede the variable name distance with this. No need. When we say no need, it means it's not necessary or compulsory because we don't have any naming conflict. Notice that the method depends only on distance and time, and distance and time are local or data members inside the class, so there is no need for any input parameters. And this completes the implementation for this method. Now we need to implement part E, so I'm going to write a comment, part E, and let us see what is required in part E. In part E, it is required to define a public method that is called isFaster that accepts as input parameter a speed record of double data type. So we know now that this method is public, its name is faster. It accepts one input parameter of type double that represents speed record. The method should return true. When it returns true, that means the return value for this method is Boolean. It returns true if the current runner's speed is faster than the speed record, which is the input parameter. And when we implement this method, we will show you how to check whether the current runner's speed is faster than the input parameter or not. Otherwise, it returns false. So let us go to JGrasp and implement this method. So we write public Boolean is faster, and it has one input parameter of type double that represents the speed record, and we are going to call it speed record. We open and close the method. So how to check the current runner's speed? If you go to the class definition up, the data, for the data we have a name, we have a distance, and we have time. So we don't have the speed. So where to find the speed? We will find the speed by using the private method that is called calculate speed. So if we want to know the speed for the current runner, then we use the method calculate speed. It will give us this speed. So here we will say f calculate speed, and remember that this is a method, so you have to include the empty round brackets for empty parameters, and we need to compare it with the speed record. And now how to check that the speed for the current runners is faster? By testing the speed. If it is greater than the speed record, then it is faster. In this case, we are going to return true, else we are going to return false. But there is a shortcut for this if and else that you can return the answer directly, because here we are testing for the return value of the calculated speed with the speed record, and the return value is either true or false. And since the return value of the method is true and false, so we can write it directly, return, and we put the condition as a return value. And there is no need to implement if and else because it will do the same job, and even you don't need the brackets. So the method will call the private method, calculate the speed, and the return value will be compared with the speed record. If it is greater than, then it will return true. If it is not greater than, it will return false. And this completes the implementation of the private method is faster. In part F, we need to define a public method that is called display details to display on the screen the runner's details as in the following table. So this method is simply printing. It is printing the runner name, followed by the distance traveled in meters, followed by the time elapsed in seconds, followed by the runner's speed in meter per square. So let us implement it. So now for part F, which is for printing, and usually for methods that print, the return value is void. So it will be public void. The name is display details, and usually does not need any input parameters because all the data that this method will print are defined inside the class or can be found from the inside the class. First, we display a message system.out.println that says runner name colon followed by the runner's name, which is this dot name. Next, we need to type. So I'm going to copy only this part and paste it. We are going to display distance traveled followed by colon, and then we should display the distance, which is also can be found from the data member that is called distance. Next, we need to display the time. So here we will say time elapsed followed by the time, which can be also found from the data this dot time. Last, we need to display the runner's speed. So here we will say runner's speed, S capital letter, followed by colon. And here we are going to call the private method that calculates the speed, calculate speed. And remember, this is a method, so you have to put the round brackets, empty round brackets, and this completes the implementation of the display details. But here we are missing something for the distance, time, and speed, the unit. So for the distance, we have to follow it by the unit, which is m. And for the time, should be seconds, which is s. And for the speed, we have to follow it by meter per second as the unit. This completes now the class definition, and we have defined all the methods and data for the class. And here we have open a bracket, but it seems that we deleted the closing bracket. So we need to include it for the class. And this completes the implementation. Now we need to compile it and test whether it has any syntax errors or not. So first we need to save it. save as. So we're going to call it marathon runner, save. So this is the name of the class. We will compile it now. So it does not have any syntax error. So we will go now to the second part of the program, which creates objects from this class. In part 2, we are going to write a Java application to do the following 3 parts. In part A, we are going to ask the user to enter a runner's first name, distance traveled, and time elapsed. Then we are going to create an object called runner1 from the class marathon runner that we defined in the previous part, and we are going to set its values according to the input data. For this part, we have defined a new class that is called marathon runner test app, and we have defined the main method inside it. Also, we have created a scanner object that is called read, and this object will be used to read the data input from the user. So first, we need to ask the user to enter the first name, distance traveled, and time elapsed. So this is for part A. We will ask the user system.out.println, and we will say enter a runner's name. And we are going to read it on separate line. So we will define the name as a string called name read.next line. So we are going to read the full name by using next line method. Next, we are going to ask the user to enter the distance traveled and we are going to read it inside a variable that we will call it distance, define double equal to read.next double. Then we are going to ask the user to enter the elapsed time, and this we are going to read it in a variable define double that is called time. But it's preferable that we also tell the user the unit for each measurement. So for example, enter the distance traveled in meters, and we ask the user to enter the elapsed time in seconds. And after reading, then we are going to create an object from marathon runner class. So we say marathon runner, and the name of the object will be runner1 equal to new marathon runner, and the constructor will accept the data input. So we will supply name, distance, and time as input parameter to the constructor. So this is the name of the class, and this is the name of the object that is called runner from the marathon runner class, and this is the constructor that will initialize the data members inside this object by the data input name, distance, and time. And now let us see what is required in part B. In part B, it says display the details of runner1. And this is very simple. We simply call the method display details. So for part B, simply we write the name of the object, runner1, then followed by the method that is responsible for displaying the details of runner1. So it is display details. And remember that this is a method without any input parameter, so you have to include empty brackets. Now for the last part, which is part C, let us read it together. In part C, it says we need to display a message that says you broke the speed record if the runners is faster than the speed record, which is of value 6.7. To do that, we need to use the method isFaster, which is already defined inside the class. So this is the method that we are going to use. And we are going to supply 6.7 as the speed record, which will be compared with the current runner speed. So let us see how we can do this. So for this part, we say if, we write the name of the object, runner1, and then we call the method is faster, and we supplied the speed record, which is 6.7. And the return value from this method, whether is it true or false. If it is true, that means the current runner's speed is faster than 6.7. In this case, we need to display a message, system.out.println. The message says you broke the speed record. Now for this if statement, we don't have else, because the question did not say what we're supposed to do if the runner did not break the speed record. So now we are done. So we need to test our program now. So first compile it. So there is a syntax error. It says that cannot find marathon. So we have a spelling mistake here. Now let's test for syntax error again. So there are no errors now. It's time to run it. We will make a space for the output screen. Now run it. It is asking for the runner's name. Let's say Ahmed Ali. And now it is asking for the distance traveled in meters. Let us give it 11700. And now it is asking for the elapsed time in seconds. We will give it 2372. So now this is the output from the program. It displays the name of the runner, the distance traveled, time elapsed, as well as the runner's speed. But notice it did not print the message that it broke the speed record, because the runner's speed 4.9 is not greater than 6.7. So let us run the program again. And this time we are going to call it Ahmed Ali. And the distance will be 11700. But this time we will say that this is 1172 seconds. So as you can see that it is faster than the speed record. So the message you broke the speed record is displayed on the output screen. And this completes the implementation of our program.